I've always felt that the Amazing Digital Circus has had a problem with public perception, I guess is what you call it. The show is filled with garish, bright and cartoonishly designed characters and sets, bouncy and stimulating animation, a sardonic, ironic and somewhat edgy sense of humour, and of course, a mysterious and hidden lure that the viewers are encouraged to piece together and theorise about. Call it mascot horror or something else, but in the past decade, people have come to see a combination of these traits as generally for kids, and seeing that Seeing that Digital Circus has many of these same traits, people tend to assume the same of it as well, which affects not only how people see the show, but who talks about the show, and the way that people do so in general, and I feel like this is very much a detriment, because while children can, and obviously do, enjoy the Amazing Digital Circus, it is, at the end of the day, an adult show, made primarily for adult men, women, and Zoobles. I'm not just saying this because all the characters are adults who swear and talk about sex. I mean the way the show is written, the adult way its characters interact with each other, the way topics like abuse, self-actualization, disassociation, and existential dread are discussed, the way increasingly larger segments of the episodes are dedicated to the characters just talking with each other, which often end up being the best parts of the episodes. I think as the show gears up for its rapidly approaching climax and begins leaning into its darker, more dramatic, more horrific elements, a lot of people are going to be caught unprepared for a shift that really isn't so much a shift or change in tone as it is the show just narrowing its focus to certain things that were already there to begin with. And I feel like you can see people's unpreparedness to discuss the show as it deserves to be discussed in some of the reactions to the latest episode. Speaking of, spoilers for the Amazing Digital Circus up to episode 6. Also, as I was writing this, I read that last sentence back and realised it sounds kind of pretentious, so let me clarify. I'm not trying to gatekeep the sad jester sadistic bunny meme show. If you got into the show because of the wacky character designs and their quirky personalities, or the theorising, or the shipping, I'm not trying to shame or discourage you from enjoying the show however you want to. This video is merely an attempt to address some of the discourse I've seen, especially after episode 6 and specifically around the character of Jax. From the beginning, Jax has been one of the big breakout characters of the show, alongside Pomni and maybe Kane. A lot of people really like him and the general archetype they think he falls under. The jerk-ass with a secret heart of gold, the bully hurting on the inside, the soft sponge with an abrasive side, you get the idea. And there's always been this kind of simmering tension between fans who like him and want that kind of narrative, and those who just don't like him because the guy's a fucking dickhead. And this tension finally boiled over when Jax himself boiled over at the climax of the most recent episode. After an episode of palling about with Pomni, reveling in their shared chaos gremlin energy and earnestly connecting with her in a way that's slowly been growing the past 2 episodes, the second she actually acknowledges this growth in their relationship, Jax, to put it simply, crashes the fuck out. He lays it all out there. I don't care about you, I don't care about anyone here, your only purpose in life is to amuse me with your suffering. Just all sorts of awful, selfish, sadistic stuff that is obviously complete bullshit, which is actually where the problems start. As always, you have people who feel vindicated that their initial read on Jax was correct, that he is a bully just putting on a front, that he is a victim just coping in the only way he knows how. And on the other side you have people going, I don't care, guy's still a piece of shit, fuck him. And without calling specific people out, I've seen a lot on both sides try and oversimplify the other argument, mostly so they can portray the other side as lesser in media literacy or even morals, which I feel is not only not a productive way to have discourse, but also kinda glazes over what exactly it is that makes a character like Jax interesting. I don't think it should be a controversial statement to say that Jax is an abuser. The cartoon logic might sugarcoat it a bit, but I don't know how else you could describe someone who physically and psychologically tortures the people around them for their own amusement and need for control. Gangle especially gets fucked over hard by him. She gets a whole scene with Zubul where they help her unpack just how awful the effect he has on her. Recently though, the show has been deconstructing why exactly Jax acts like this, tearing little rips in his detached, composed sadism and giving interesting glimpses of characterization, from the way he deliberately isolates himself in certain instances to the way he actually does seem to care about what other people think. But it's episode 6 that really cracks him open and spills out his gooey brain for the feasting. Jax's behaviour, his entire personality, is purposefully constructed to avoid having to acknowledge the humanity of everyone in the circus, including himself. Whereas others try to cling to the remnants of what they once were, Jax seems to be trying his absolute hardest to forget that he ever was human by just embracing the fact that he's an off-brand Looney Tunes character, throwing himself and everyone else into narrow, easy-to-define character archetypes that are safe, predictable, and easy to deal with. This is, of course, total bullshit. The entire episode goes out of its way to prove his casting of everyone, including himself, is completely false, but it gives him an illusion of control, something he desperately needs in order to simply keep everything together. Which is ironic because in the one episode that most deprives him of control, episode 4, he's actually at his most tolerable. He's still rude and snarky, but he doesn't actually do anything. He does his job, he talks normally to people. By the end of the day, he's just taking Gangle's orders and chatting with Pomni. I mean, he does start the day by deep frying Ragatha, so you can only improve from there. The thing is, developing Jax in this way, explaining the traumatic thought process behind his actions, doesn't deprive him of agency or responsibility, but rather highlights it. Man is clearly struggling and probably the most at risk of abstraction at the moment, but his hell is 100% his own making. Sure, he didn't ask to be trapped here, but he did choose to react to it by making the lives of everyone around him even more miserable, and no matter the reasons behind it, that deserves a smack to the face in my book. Being aware of the emotions driving him, seeing him crack and suffer as he struggles to hold it together, these aren't things designed to redeem him in the eyes of the viewer, but humanize him. Because as easy as it is to pretend that the only things that can hurt us are simple, easy monsters, caricatures that we can spot a mile away, well, we know where that thinking leads us, don't we?
There's nothing more to me. So please, just stop looking.
When I was thinking of characters that reminded me of Jax, the first that came to mind was, on the surface, a surprising one, but the more I thought about it, I quickly came to realise how appropriate an addition they would be to this video. Chainsaw Man is another series that I feel doesn't always get the credit it deserves. Rather than looking at grand and abstract ideas, Chainsaw Man deals with the search for and fulfillment of base needs: food, shelter, companionship, intimacy, things that basically every warm-blooded animal comes out the womb wanting. And because of that, I think there's an instinct for people, especially starting out, to approach it on that base level. Oh, Chainsaw Man? Yeah, the dumb, stupid show about a guy with a chainsaw for a head who wants to fuck real bad. Yeah, if Tarantino directed anime, this is what he'd make. And yeah, you ain't wrong, but it's because of those universal base concepts and themes that Chainsaw Man has the ability to dive as deep as it does, and while there are many directions we could walk, for the purposes of this video, we're headed to Makima Lane. Spoilers for part 1 of Chainsaw Man. Makima is, pretty much from day one, openly grooming Denji. She recognizes his need for, at first, basic necessities like food and shelter, and then human intimacy and connection, and uses these wants to manipulate him into being
no different than a trained dog.
She dangles rewards like comfort, companionship, and sex over his head to motivate him to do the things she wants him to do without regard for his actual well-being and development. And when he finally attains a semblance of normalcy and genuine, real connection with Aki and power, Makima rips both away from him for the express purpose of breaking him down so that he gives up on ever attaining happiness, thus allowing her control of Chainsaw Man, control she desires because, well, she is the control devil, the living embodiment of mankind's fear of control. Every single relationship is purely transactional and only serves as a means to obtain more power for herself, with her ultimate goal to use Chainsaw Man to obliterate chaos and rule a perfect, flawless world in her image. Makima is a fucking terrifying person. The thoughts and lives of others only mean as much as she can get out of them. She's a professional manipulator who is probably half the reason why most of public safety is made up of the legally insane, and oh yeah, she purposefully gives Denji comfort, stability, and a family who loves him, all so she can take them away from him in an instant and destroy him as a person. To me, the horror behind her character is similar to the horror behind a film like Midsommar, where the horror lies in the realization that true danger, true threats don't disappear when you gain a support system, when you find safety, when you find love and companionship. In some ways, it's when you're at your most content, you're at your most vulnerable. TLDR, Makima is a truly awful person. And then I remember Chapter 39. Chapter 39 of Chainsaw Man largely consists of Makima seemingly on a whim taking Denji out on a date, which takes the form of a back-to-back-to-back movie marathon. Denji, being Denji, starts it off fucking ecstatic, but finds he can't get into the movies they're watching. In fact, he thinks they're all pretty terrible. Makima agrees, and the two take time in between each film to discuss what they thought about it, the things they liked and didn't like. Denji admits he's worried that films just aren't for him, but Makima reassures him, saying that though most of the films she's seen have left no impact on her, the few that have truly changed her life. They go to see their final film of the day, some unknown foreign film, and as they're watching it, Denji is suddenly struck with emotion and can't help but start crying. Embarrassed, he turns to Makima, ashamed to be seen like this by her, but to his surprise, she's crying too. The thing about all your relationships being based on accumulating as much power over the other person as possible is that it's kind of impossible to have a relationship based on that foundation. At least, the kind of relationship that allows for the unspoken intimacy of equals, the kind of connection that forms when two people, unconcerned with power plays and dynamics, simply be with each other. And Makima knows this, knows that she will never experience the simplicity of holding another being without caveats, the comfort of being with someone you don't have to manipulate into giving affection, who you can love without ulterior motive. By her very nature, it is impossible. Her crying in this moment isn't just her connecting with a desire for companionship, it's her grieving an experience she will never have. Now, does this make her any less of a terrifying monster? No. She is a literal world-ending devil who manipulates a lonely, emotionally stunted 16-year-old child with sex in order to destroy everything and everyone he holds dear. She is nothing less than a monster. And yet, even monsters cry at their favourite films. What does that say about them? About art? About what it means to be a monster, about what it means to be human. To me, what Makima's character says is that even the worst person we know, even the most awful and terrifying person we can imagine, has something in common with us, has something about them that we could relate to, has some basic humanity that ties us all together, and that recognizing that can be a valuable lesson when it comes to figuring out what any of us even want. Which, if Chainsaw Man is to be believed, is a lot of hugs. And I'm not gonna say otherwise. As tempting as it is to stick with Chainsaw Man and all it has to offer, I literally had to flip a coin to decide if I should talk about Makima or Himeno. There is one other character from a different series that I want to chat about. See, Jax and Makima are both characters that I recognise as bad people, but I still personally find compelling and entertaining and interesting, enough so that I can't actually say I hate seeing them on screen. So I thought it would be fitting to end this with a character that really does good on this video's title. A hurt person whom I truly do hate. But first, a cry for help. This is the Surface Pro 7 that I have been doing all my work on, editing, composing, recording, for the last 5 years or so. Ignoring how it even lasted that long, after all this time of punching above its weight, the thing is finally at its breaking point and I need something else. Preferably an actual laptop and not a glorified tablet. Unfortunately, I'm not all that liquid right now, so I would very much appreciate your support. If you like what I do and want to help me not only keep at it, but improve at it, then you can donate to either my Ko-fi, my Patreon, or buy my music on Bandcamp. A big thank you to everyone who has donated already, including my patrons, in particular Michael Coolwood and El Bigante. You can also help by simply liking, commenting and sharing my videos. Things have been a bit weird on this platform the past few months, so every little bit helps. Alright, back to where we left things off. Floch Foster is introduced round about halfway through Attack on Titan. That's towards the end of volume 17 of the manga and halfway through season 3 of the anime, so spoilers for the series from that point onwards. Initially introduced in a seemingly inconsequential manner, Floch surprisingly keeps showing up in subsequent scenes, characterized as a coward, yes, one lured in by dreams of glory, got in way over his head. But given the situation he's in, it's hard to blame him for cracking under the pressure a bit. After being galvanized to take part in Irvin's suicide charge, Floch is, seemingly by sheer luck, the only one who isn't shredded by the Beast Titan, and ends up as one of the only 9 surviving scouts. In a cast of highly driven, kinda unstable superhumans, Floch at first almost feels like a bit of a breath of fresh air. He's just a very normal man who takes issue with the egocentrism shown by the protagonists, giving a very valuable difference in perspective. For as rude as his words may be, they're a nice reminder that, hey, not everyone is an overpowered anime protagonist, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't take them or their concerns seriously. It's a role that I really appreciate him filling. Oh, where did it all go wrong? The topic of Attack on Titan and whether or not it is a fascist piece of media or simply a piece of media about fascism is a massive topic that I do not have the time to get into today. Maybe I will in the future, but not right now. For the purposes of this video, we are treating it as the latter. And there are few characters in Attack on Titan more overtly fascist than Floch Foster. If we were to compare him to the organised military power of Mali, which is more of a fascist Italy, Nazi Germany, Floch, I feel, is more like the modern alt-right, the kinda sad, aimless and lonely man radicalised by 4chan memes, Donald Trump and the South African Weasel. As a series that basically wears how complex and morally grey it is as a badge of honour, I think Floch is one of like 3 named characters that are just open arseholes. Oh, maybe I should have thought before I wrote that down. Post-time skip Floch is a callous, ruthless, hypocritical ethno-nationalist who not only seems fully aware of his place in the cycle of war and hatred, but happily takes advantage of it in order to improve his own standing in whatever primitive, twisted society he makes. And whenever you say that, you always get self-loathing fascists, too pussy to call themselves what they actually are, crawling out of the woodwork to defend him like, oh, so it's fascist to defend your country, so you're saying you should have just rolled over and died? Fucking cringe, bro. Even ignoring the fact that that defensive strategy involves a deliberately provocative attack designed to then justify literally destroying all life on Earth, that excuse flies out the window when Floch admits he plans on depriving Paradis of advanced technology, effectively freezing it in its pseudo-Georgian state of development for the purpose of keeping its people dumb and easy to control, which is why the old royalist government was overthrown to begin with, which is literally the reason he joined the Scouts in the first place. Like I said, there's a lot to be said about Attack on Titan's framing of militarism and authoritarianism, but I think it's hard to deny that it isn't painting Floch as a hypocritical, sadistic, selfish little prick who uses the concerns and fears of those around him as the steps to his own hand-picked throne. I also think it's hard to deny that Floch himself is ultimately just another part of that vicious cycle of vengeance and pain, even as he tries to use it to his advantage. I think a lot of Floch's character can be traced to the trauma he suffered during the massacre at Shiganshina, and not just because he was the sole survivor of a suicide charge. He went from shitting himself in absolute terror and openly talking about running away, to following his commander and everyone else he knew straight into the jaws of death. And I think this event really warped his perception of what it means to be a good leader. A good leader, from Floch's experience, is a ruthless devil who is willing to sacrifice anybody and everybody in the name of the greater good. Never mind the fact that Irvin Smith was an extremely depressed, unfulfilled man who was just in it for the law and bluffed his way to the top. He is basically who Floch models himself after. The grandiose speeches, the hero worship, the cultivation of a cult of death and action, the hyping up of an existential threat replacing Titans with all of humanity, the same radical populism except even more selective and elitist this time, and hey, look at that, I'm just reading fascism again. Remember when this video was about edgy cartoon rabbits? I remember. As hateable as Floch is, he's ultimately just a bit player in the grander scheme of history. You kill him, and unless you actually take the time to address the situation that birthed him, another 10 even more unhinged men will take his place. I keep thinking about that scene at the end of Season 3, before he begins his transformation into Eren's sword swallower in chief, where he criticizes his protagonist-centered morality. He calls him out for thinking he's always right, for being a stubborn child who never listens, and tells him that even the so-called inconsequential have, if nothing else, the right to decide what to die for.
Medals? For what? A memorial for who? When you guys start rebuilding the Survey Corps, you better tell your recruits the truth. Or else you'll just end up with cowards like me in the ranks.
And seeing this scene in light of everything Floch would go on to become, I can't help but feel pity for him. The cool thing about fiction is that it gives us the power and space to appreciate and understand the complexities of issues in a way that we might not be in a position to do so IRL. If I was being physically abused by a man, I don't think I would care about the existential dread that fueled their abuse. If I was being groomed by an older woman, I don't think I would care about her desire for companionship. If I was at risk of being subjugated by a racist, genocidal fascist, I would make this YouTube video. To me, what characters like Jax, Makima, and even Floch say is that no matter how cartoonishly evil one might seem, there's always dynamics and nuances that manifest unseen, and I think it's important to realise that acknowledging these sides, these hidden depths, are in no way equal to forgiveness or redemption, which is a word I find myself increasingly getting frustrated with nowadays. It's difficult to accept that awful, disgusting things are done by people and not monsters, but I feel like there's danger in not doing so. I think to deny the humanity in people we hate is to deny the capacity for violence in the people we don't, or even ourselves. To dismiss them as monsters is the easy way out, a defense mechanism to avoid having to wrestle or even think about it more than you have to, which is more than fair. But if we don't see them for what they are, that stops us from not only dealing with what they are, but also might make it harder for us to recognize and head off similar things in the future. Again, not saying it's bad to hate, Lord knows there are plenty of people and plenty of reasons. All I'm saying is, know what and why it is you hate. It's to the benefit of not just the person you hate, not just the people around them, but also to yourself. Don't hate harder, hate smarter.